Hello, everyone. Welcome to Natty News, the nattiest news show in the world. My name is Anwar, and I am joined by Pat, Olympic weightlifter Woo. Pat, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. It might have been too long a day of coaching, and I'm sounding a little bit like a chain smoker, but I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well as well. I got my second COVID vaccine shot, feeling good so far. I'll see how it hits me tomorrow, but no, good, feeling good.
Nice, good, good. What's going on in our world of trading this week? I'll start. I've been not really lifting weights that seriously. So yeah, I mean, I'm still on a program, but it's a lot more like conditioning stuff. I did sumo deadlifts this week. I just did like about 300 pounds just because my form was not good on them. And then I've been playing so much tennis. But yeah, just kind of try to enjoy my summer. But how about you?
Yeah, due to some traveling I had to do, unfortunately, I've been actually out of the gym for a little bit. So
Mm.
I've been doing some home workouts again when I was in quarantine when I came back to Canada, as well as now that I'm out of quarantine, I had to do a little other trip, which resulted in me still not able to go to the gym and just a lot of cardio. So probably tomorrow will be my first day back at the weight. So we'll see how that works. But yeah, otherwise it's been pretty good. Still been working on those cartwheels. Gonna finally get those one day.
Yeah, well, hey, it's Olympic time, man. You got to get your gymnastics, get your gymnastics up. But yeah, so Natty News is making no gains, but you're here first.
Yeah, this is a no gain, a little segment in Natty News. Um, but yeah, kind of speaking about athletes who are making a ton of gains. For your Natty News recap, we're gonna do an Olympics focus. So, as many of our listeners might know, the Olympics is going on full speed. There's been some amazing performances already, and if you haven't had the chance to see anything, right now, in Natty News Recap, we'll give you the recap of what's been going on in the Olympics. So, Pat, how about you start us off? What's been going on in the Olympics?
Sure. Well, I feel compelled to tell us about weightlifting, being the weightlifting guy on the show. I don't think anything there's been dramatic sessions, but nothing too eventful. So like the ones that have happened have been the women's 49, the men's 61, and the men's 67, all of which were won by Team China. Really to no surprise. The story behind how the men's sessions were a little bit more dramatic. The women's one, she was just too good. I think she beat everyone by like 7 or 8 kilos, and she was still being conservative. But in the 49s, I think India, um a lady called Mirabai, I think she won her India's first medal with a clean and jerk of 115, weighing 49 kilos. So she's pretty strong, pretty strong. And I think a girl from Thailand may have gotten third. But yeah, but Amber, you as someone who didn't follow weightlifting saw a certain interesting lift on the internet.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about it. I've been seeing this all over social media. It's this insane athlete. I believe he's from China, and he was doing a clean and jerk. And when he finally locked it out and everything's looked good, he lifts his leg up, and he's kind of one-legged with ungodly amount of weight above his head, and it's kind of like balances it with one leg. And just holds it up there, and I wasn't sure if like it was a balance thing or was he just like flexing on everyone, being like, "Hey, this is so light. I only need one leg. Like, come on, guys, just give me the gold already." Like, so I wanted to ask you, what was going on with that clip? I'm sure a lot of our listeners might have seen it as well.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. I knew it was popular in weightlifting circles, but I didn't know that like general viewers were enjoying it. But I'm sure it's pretty dramatic. So this is Li Fa Bin, the 61 kilogram lifter, and the weight at hand I believe was 170 kilos. So it's a lot of weight um, for this guy. And so what kind of happened was he did his clean, and this is not the first time he's done it before. So he's called Flamingo Lifa Bin for a reason, because I think he just has some weird balance weight shift issues. Maybe one leg is just like a lot stronger or balanced than the other. That sometimes when he recovers from a jerk, one of his feet will just go up and float in the air, and he'll just suspend before he recovers. But it's not the first time it's happened to him, and it's crazy that that was the lift that he kind of took to secure the gold medal in the Olympic Games.
Man, what a way to win the gold medal, and I expect nothing less from someone whose nickname is the Flamingo.
Yeah, it's kind of like a Doflamingo, you know. Just shout out to the One Piece fans out there. This guy's a legend.
Oh man, that's interesting. Do you ever find that too, like kind of doing something like that when you do a jerk? Like, do you ever find that you need to have that added balance, or is it really just unique to him?
It's pretty unique to him. I could not. If I lifted a leg off the ground with anything more than 100, like I think I would just fall. I don't think I could suspend it over. It was like overhead. He's like standing on one foot. His leg was like a good foot in the air too. I'm not
Yeah.
talking like slightly up. So it's incredible. I think he could have been a good circus athlete if ever he decided he wanted to do that.
No, that was incredibly impressive. But no, awesome. And yeah, I think so far it's been mostly the women who have been competing who have been doing some insane weight currently. So it's going to be interesting to see as we get into the higher and higher weight categories. Near the end is going to be the super heavyweight. So let's see what happens there too, and we'll keep everyone up to date on the Olympic weightlifting as well as the general Olympics. Pat, anything else interesting you see happen in the Olympics?
Yeah, well, moving on from the weightlifting, Canada was able to pick up the first medals.
Yeah,
The
go
first two
Canada.
medals in the Olympics in the water. So, starting off with the 4x100 freestyle, the women actually came back from a pretty good deficit. I think after the third person, I think they were in like fourth or fifth place, and Penny Oleksiak, who was a previous Olympic medalist, stormed back to get a silver medal. She went head to head with the American swimmer. It was I went and watched the replay. It was really close. They were just neck and neck, same speed, and I think she just got the stride on her at the end, made up a lot of difference. So that was one medal, and then another comeback win in the 3-meter synchronized diving. I cannot pronounce his name properly. Jennifer Abel and Melissa, we're just going to call her Melissa CB, has a French name that I have a hard time with, but they won another silver medal. And so in diving, you get five tricks or 5 dive attempts, right? So after the first 2 attempts, they were actually in 5th place. But they were able to come back from that and just came in clutch into the last 3 to go all the way up to 2nd place. So yeah, a lot of good comeback wins, and I love nothing more than a good clutch comeback.
Oh, that's fantastic. And man, go Canada. Look at those amazing Canadian athletes go. And how's the future for Canada looking for the Olympics? Do you think we have potential to win some more medals?
Yeah, I think so. Unfortunately, in men's tennis, our top ranked player, who Felix, another French name that I cannot pronounce, he was actually the 9th seed in Tokyo, but he lost in the first round. Unfortunately, just had a bit of an off day. One thing I noticed, I watched a little bit of the Olympic tennis, was that there's no crowd. Tennis is really weird without a crowd. Usually it's, the players feed off the crowd, either giving them motivation or talking crap to them during the games. And I think I'm sure that's throwing a lot of people off. And they're also playing quite early in the day. And I don't know if every athlete's used to those conditions. But beyond that, I think there's a couple potential for medals. So more in swimming, more water. Maggie McNeil is a 100-meter butterfly swimmer, and 9:30 Eastern time, I believe that's tonight. I think that might be right now. Is competing in the 100-meter butterfly. Shoot a shot at the medal. Summer McIntosh is going to compete in the 400-meter freestyle final. That's also going to be later on tonight. So I guess by the time this episode is out, you'll know what the results are. And if you haven't, you should definitely go check it out. We're also, it seems like we have a potential female judo medalist contender. Her name is Jessica Klimkate from Ontario. And that begins. I've done a little bit of judo when I was a kid, and I always thought that was like a really tough sport. I think it's also really cool how many different ways there are to toss someone. And I know you have like a little bit of type of experience with like rolling, chucking people, and that kind of thing. So I'll definitely be trying to watch a little bit of these combat type sports.
Yeah, no, definitely. I did a little judo myself as well, and man, it is such a tough sport, but also such a beautiful one too. About when you see someone do a good throw, and it's just like it's amazing. It just looks weightless with the body and everything. So it's a really cool one. And I know Judo Canada has been putting a lot of work into some of the younger athletes and really been doing a lot of building. So it's exciting to see that pay off. So that's going to be a really interesting one to look at. Not only in that one category, but just completely with judo in Canada. Let's see how we can do this year. Uh, but yeah, no, that's a great summary of how Canada is looking for the upcoming Olympic Games. To give a bit of a high level overview, the current medal count, it seems that we got China in number one, 6 gold, 1 silver, 4 bronze. A lot of those golds are coming from the weightlifters, as Pat and I mentioned
More to
before.
come.
Yeah, Chinese weightlifting is just a whole nother level above everyone else. In second place comes Japan with 5 gold medals and 1 silver, which, man, that's some good home court advantage. But those Japanese athletes, they have the love of their people around them, and hopefully they can keep it up and have a great year for Japan. And in third, we got the United States with 4 golds, 2 silvers, and 4 bronze. But it's early on. Let's see how the US of A can do in this battle. But honestly, so far it's been a pretty good Olympic Games. I know some of the Olympic athletes have gone and tested positive for COVID, so hopefully those are all handled and the rest of the athletes can stay safe. Of course, it's unprecedented times. It could be difficult, no crowds and everything, but it's still pretty cool that we're having the Olympics back.
Yeah, I have mixed thoughts on it too, but I mean, if it's going to be on and these athletes don't have anyone cheering them on, I mean, least we can do is at least watch, especially for those for those performances where Canada's got a good chance to win or even just to represent.
Well, the way I kind of think about it too is like a lot of these athletes have dedicated their entire lives to these
Yeah,
moments. And like if you just cancel it or push back like 3, 4 years can be devastating to any athlete. So if
yeah.
they have mentally prepared themselves for this time, I do feel it's a little unfair to kind of cancel that after putting so much time and effort. So although is a bit of a controversy, I do believe that it is the right time, and hopefully everything can be handled to keep as many people safe as possible. And it seems that they've been doing a lot of good work currently.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, something I've talked to some good athletes on is high level athletes are a little crazy. All of them have said they're willing to lose years of their lives and whatnot for to be able to compete and whatnot. I can never understand that, but yeah, I think a lot of them are glad to this opportunity.
Yeah, and that's fantastic. Well, as Olympic Games has been going on, another types of games have been happening, Pat. The CrossFit Games. And oh man, I think what would be a better time than now to talk about CrossFit?
Yeah, the CrossFit Games they begin on the 27th and they go all the way until August 1st. Now, Amber, do you often watch the CrossFit Games?
You know what? I'll be honest with you, Pat. I have never watched the CrossFit Games except for some of those like meme compilation videos of like cringy exercises of people kind of making fun of them. Like that's kind of been my most biggest exposure. But for preparing this episode, I tried to actually watch some of the events and uh, kind of see it from the other side. Coming with an unbiased, full natty opinion of it. So I can say now I have seen some, but like many fitness bros, I think CrossFit has been seen very negatively. But before we go delve into it, how about you, Pat? Do you ever watch the CrossFit Games?
Yeah, I've never watched one like in live time when it's on, but there's been some like documentaries and on like Netflix and just a lot of like recordings. I've watched quite a bit of that. Like guys like Matt Fraser, guys like women like Tia Claire Toomey and the all the like Nordic ladies with last names daughter. They're all really good at it. And I think there's a couple Canadians. I think one of which lives up in Kelowna, who's also been like up to like a silver medalist. CrossFit Games. So I've watched a lot of that. Um, my opinion, I actually have a lot of respect for the sport. I think it's a great sport. I think it's very impressive what they do at that level. It's something I could never fathom doing. I just think it's a great sport, but I don't think it's a great practice.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's kind of the preview of my stance. There's a little bit more nuance than that, but we'll get into it in a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely do think people like to make fun of it a lot, and there are some reasons too. But
Yeah.
I also have to say that when you look at some of these events, it is actually incredibly impressive the
Yep.
versatility of those athletes or what they're able to do. Like an example is like Pat, you can snatch 100 kgs, and you could probably do it for a couple of reps. But then could you also then do like a 5 mile run and then like 100 pull-ups afterwards? And like it just kind of adds that versatility that not only have you be able to be the strength and the technique for these lifts, you also have to show some endurance and some other types of forms where you can't really be a specialist. You have to kind of be pretty generally fit in a lot of aspects. So when they give the announcement that this is the fittest man or woman in the world, it's kind of hard to disagree with that statement after seeing what they go through.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, the by definition, CrossFit themselves, they say what it is it's constantly varied functional movement performed at a high intensity, and then their goal is that CrossFitters are like jacks of all trades and they're masters of none. So they are pretty good at a variety of disciplines related to athletics, but definitely not the best in the world at any, right? So yeah, if fitness, if what it means to you is to be pretty decently good at all forms of like physical activity, it's not a bad argument that CrossFitters are up there.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess we can start off with maybe like what is CrossFit? Like what is the difference between doing like a CrossFit than doing Olympic lifting or strongman or just regular bodybuilding or powerlifting? Like what makes CrossFit unique? If someone who is not familiar with CrossFit whatsoever, how would you describe it to them?
Yeah, well, CrossFit, they run with what you call these WODs, right? Like, which you've definitely heard the term, and WODs are like workout of the day. Now, where traditional workouts you often run with sets and reps and whatnot, and there's program rest time. Most of these workouts look more like you're often performing stuff for time or for volume. So, for example, like one of the I had the link open, but I have it closed now. I think the workout's called a Cindy or a Fran. It's one of those, but it's like 5 pull-ups, 10 push-ups, and 15 squats, and you do as many as you can in 15 minutes, right? So it's not sets and reps. It's like you work at your own pace and you try to do that. So that's usually like the WODs, and that's like a very basic one. But some of the other ones will do different things like ladders, like oh, you do 21 deadlifts, 21 thrusters, and like 21 box jumps. And then you do the same for like 14, and then you do the same for 7. But they are rarely linear sets and reps workouts with programmed rest. They're almost always like this. Yeah, it's kind of like a challenge. You challenge the volume or you challenge it according to time.
Yeah, I think that's a great explanation. And it seems one of the big things about it is it's not only challenging, it's not like purely strength training as you would see in most gym sessions. It is kind of a mixture of endurance with strength training.
Yeah, and that's what they sell, right? The idea of CrossFit is strength training just gets you strong, cardio gets you cardio. But when you do CrossFit, the proposal is that you work all kinds of energy systems, aerobic, anaerobic, your phosphocreatine, like you work power, strength, hypertrophy, and like endurance. That's the proposal.
And another thing too is for the average person, if they go to a CrossFit gym, it is almost always going to be group classes. Like, of course, there are people who do train CrossFit alone, maybe at a home gym or something. But normally, when you do a CrossFit class, it's a group environment with it. So it would be all the people together doing this one workout of the day. And the workout of the day could be very varied. You could be, like you said, you could be maybe doing snatches for time, or it could be like doing like 100 push-ups, varied with like maybe some squats and some pull-ups and other stuff like that.
Yeah, and one of the key principles behind CrossFit is that it's constantly varied. So there's not like you're not going to do, oh, like on this program we're only going to do body weight. Like you could come in on Monday and do a Cindy, which is like the 5 pull-ups, 10 push-ups, 15 squats, and then you'll come in on Wednesday and you'll do a Grace, and the Grace is just 30 clean and jerks at 135 for time. So it's very varied, and you'll do anywhere from body weight movements to powerlifting to dumbbells to Olympic lifting to rings, also gymnastics, and then a lot of plyometrics. So there's a very big variety of things that are involved in the CrossFit repertoire.
Yeah, it can be a lot of different movements going on there. So I think that's a pretty good description of what CrossFit is. So I think to start off, to take away my bro biases, let's talk about some of the pros of CrossFit. What are the good things we have with it? So I can start off. I think one of the big pros, I think of one of the reasons people get into it is the group fitness side of it, where lifting alone can be a little boring, it can be monotonous, and especially if you don't know what to do with programming, it can be a little intimidating. So CrossFit takes that away. You're able to come in a group session where you're going to have someone who will give you a workout to do. You're with other people. There's a whole social element to it. There's a whole culture of CrossFit that you can be part of that feels good to say you're part of it, and all that good stuff. So I think one of the pros of CrossFit is it does give you a lot of structure and social benefit to it, where it's kind of like a fun thing you do. You do CrossFit with your friends.
Yeah, I think that's very much something that ties people together. I mean, the type of people that are involved in it often are working class people who spend long days, right? And then it's a good way to, like fitness is one of our like core things as people, but also so is being social. And then it kills two birds with one stone. And I think a lot of people can enjoy that. So another good benefit of it, it can be pretty great and fun for conditioning because you do a bunch of varied things, right? Like I hate running. You like running, but I hate running. I don't like doing cardio conditioning, but it could be pretty fun to do a little like fun circuit. There's a little bit of barbell, there's a little bit of jogging involved, a little bit of jumping, and done at the right level, it's pretty good conditioning and it's fun. It can be a good time, and I think for people who don't like doing conditioning, like anytime you can make that aspect fun is great because when it's fun, you'll probably try harder too.
Yeah, completely. And you're right. It could be a very fun way. It kind of gamifies doing endurance training, which a lot of people might be able to enjoy. Another really good thing is if you have a good coach at the gym, it can actually give you a very good fundamentals to a lot of the different ways of lifting. Like you do some powerlifting movement, you do some Olympic weightlifting, you do some kettlebells, you do some calisthenics, body weight. Like you really are doing almost every different type of like fitness, lifting, gym stuff you could. So if you have a good coach that can go through each one of those, it can give you a very good understanding of a bunch of different movements.
Yeah, it's definitely way more than you would get exposing yourself to a traditional gym environment, where most of the time you would do at most dumbbells, barbells, right? That's kind of the standard, and definitely wouldn't do Olympic lifting. You definitely probably wouldn't do like skipping, double unders. You wouldn't do handstands, all that stuff.
Yes, it really does give a lot of varied stuff that you can all do together. An Another thing about it that also could be really good is also just exposure as well. So not only learning the different stuff, but also like kind of finding what you enjoy and not enjoy doing too. Like I know I have a few people who do CrossFit I know and talk about, and they kind of say like doing CrossFit made them like fall in love with doing calisthenic stuff. Like just doing that experience kind of got them into it. And like when we had Tom on before, he talked about how people would do CrossFit and fall in love with Olympic weightlifting and be like, man, I never knew about this, and now I'm getting into it. So it can kind of give you an exposure to a lot of different stuff too. Not only learn it, but also see what you like to do and not like to do.
That's a great point. Yeah, and I've met people who they've done CrossFit, they love a lot of it, but they're like, damn, I hate the conditioning, but they like the weightlifting, and then they convert to weightlifting, or maybe they like the gymnastics and they go and sign up for a class in gymnastics. So it's a pretty good gateway, right? You get a little bit of exposure to it all.
Yeah. So, anything else you're thinking about? Or you think we gave a fair assessment of the pros of CrossFit?
I think that's pretty good.
I agree. I think that's a pretty fair. Okay, so now the cons. uh, and so, if some of you have or haven't seen, I would say probably one of the biggest cons of CrossFit, and the most common one you would hear, is that it can be very dangerous. And the reason why it can be dangerous is, as we mentioned, that there's a huge variety of different lifts you do. If you do not do those lifts properly, they could injure you. Like if you do a deadlift with a cat back, just fully rounded, oh man, you're gonna slip a disc. Or if you do a clean and jerk or snatch without the very intricate details of Olympic weightlifting, you're gonna have a bad time. So one of the big complaints I've heard from people from CrossFit is that since it is a class environment, it can be very difficult to get those precise details when you train, and you could maybe build bad habits in your lifting technique where it would lead people to injury. Another thing too is when you're doing something very intricate or very tough, like a deadlift or a snatch or a clean and jerk, for time, where you're trying to do as many reps as possible, it's hard for the average person to know when to stop, when their firm's breaking down. And a lot of people get in the attitude of no pain, no gain. So it doesn't matter if it hurts. I got to keep on grinding out that next rep, not realizing where there is a point when to stop. I mean, you and I have talked about before about like intensity and how you don't really want to go to 100% when your body can't take anymore. That you need to realize when your firm's broken down, when you're going too much, because otherwise you're just gonna break down your body for no good reason. So I would say though that has probably been the most common criticism of CrossFit. What do you think, Pat? You got some other ones? Any bigger ones than that?
Well, I think, to reiterate your point from a more nerdy point of view, it's we've talked about how when people get hurt, now there's a lot of new evidence that maybe it's not technique that gets people hurt, but one thing that definitely gets people hurt is pushing too hard when you're really, really, really tired. The more fatigued you are and the more aggressive, quick stuff you do, the more that's when you get at injury risk, right? That's why when you see, like, for example, NBA players coming off a short off season, a lot of them got hurt this year. So with CrossFit, what you have is usually a combination of people who don't have the highest expertise of movements. Like they don't deadlift with the greatest form to begin with. And then they're doing like AMRAPs as many as possible, or they're doing like EMOMs every minute of the minute with like a decently heavy weight. They're fine on the first minute, but by the 10th minute, they're gassed. Like they probably don't even want to get up. So they half-ass it. They round out their back. They jerk the weight. They don't tighten up their core, and they're fatigued. And that's where kind of getting hurt comes in, right? It's I would even say like, one bad rep with not the greatest form is not going to hurt you, but one bad rep at the end of a WOD when you're wasted, your injury risk is pretty high. And you do this 3 times a week, all year long. Like it's the risk is just pretty high for what you get from it, which I don't think the results are that much better than, if you were to follow a more conservative program. Like you don't want to go always balls to the wall, as we've talked about so much.
That's actually very interesting. You mentioned that injury isn't always linked to fault in technique. So, kind of correct me if I'm wrong, but are you saying that like as long as you don't get too exhaustive, you can be pretty forgiving with your technique for a lot of lifts and not get injured?
Yeah, well, I mean, the argument to have is like what exactly is like good and bad technique has kind of evolved over time, right? Like, you remember like for example, a narrative that like when you press, you should always like knuckles up, and you should never wrist back because that puts too much pressure on your wrist. We used to hear that before, right? But then another way to think about it is, okay, there's pressure in your wrists, but let's just make sure our wrists are strong enough to support that weight, while also understanding that like wrist back is a more secure holding position for an overhead press than knuckles up, where you're kind of using much more musculature. Or like the idea of like knees going over your toes. Once upon a time, that was a universal truth, right? Going over your toes leads to pain. So that stuff evolves. So you can debate it. But what you can't debate is that if someone is dead tired and then they're forced to move quickly, aggressively, with a lot of load to something that they may not be capable of that moment, that is almost certainly like an injury risk. I think that is something that's just not as flexible.
Okay, that's really interesting. And that does make me think too, because I also like a lot of times, to kind of talk about another lift is people talk about rounding your back in deadlifts. I mean, I just said it with my example, but there are
Mhm.
some very heavy lifters who have to do round their back, but then they bring up the point about that their starting position, that they start in a rounded position, but they keep everything tight throughout the lift, where then it
Exactly.
is safe. But then the danger is if you start with a neutral back and then it rounds midway through the lift and you lose all tightness. So I can actually really see what you mean about that, where it is hard to tell what truly is bad form. It's not as easy as what people used to think.
Exactly. Things are really evolving in terms of that. Now, what I think on another side, though, form matters maybe more to optimize the lift, right? Like
Hmm.
when you do a clean, you want your back straight because that activates the right musculature, right? To get the weight up. Like when you do a pull up, you want to have a certain posture to make sure you can go straight up and down rather than forward and backwards. So technique is not useless. It's really important. And I think even if there's a chance you can prevent injury, you might as well learn good form because at the very least, you're getting performance improvement and maybe injury prevention. So it's always should focus on technique anyways.
Yeah, yeah. And to kind of bring it back to the whole CrossFit thing, where I feel like to gain the confidence to do a true AMRAP at a lift takes thousands, tens of thousands of reps for you to really be able to hammer out your body's movement where even when you're super tired, you can keep the same technique in your last rep as in your first rep. And so when you have these CrossFit workouts where it might be snatches for time and you just started doing it a couple months ago, there was no way you can hold the same technique throughout each one of those.
Exactly. And from a learning perspective, we know that your body adapts to the pattern, does all the time. And let's say you're doing like dumbbell snatches incorrectly, like as in like they're always forward, they always crunch your shoulder a little bit, you're always in a little bit of pain, and then they're in your wads every single week. So you just do them in a way that's not good for your body every single week. Even if you eventually your coach points out, let's correct your form, you're gonna have such a hard time correcting it. Maybe you'll do it well in the first set, but when you're tired, guess what you're going back to? You're gonna go back to the form that you've done the most reps with. So it's just this whole idea of bringing beginners in and just rushing them into doing all these different things, and then at a high intensity. I just don't like the formula.
Yeah, and you know what? You bring in another one of the cons I had, which it was like how strict the WODs are in the sense of, let's say you don't like doing a movement. Like for me, I don't like barbell rows. Now, I don't know if CrossFit does many barbell rows, but I don't like doing them. I don't feel much lat activation. I don't feel like they're very effective. I don't like them. But in a CrossFit sense, you have to do what's in the WOD. So even if there are movements you don't enjoy, you don't like, you have to do it. And I really don't like that. I like workouts to be flexible. I like it to be that if I want to work, if I don't like doing, I don't know, overhead press, I like to do dumbbell shoulder press. I like to have that opportunity to switch and have that flexibility. And I find with the WODs, especially where it's your coach decides it. Maybe you're feeling an injury. Maybe your quads aren't feeling the best that day, but you still have to go in and then do the same WOD as everyone else. I don't love that system.
Yeah, and you're always going fast. You're always going hard. And I know that sells. Like I know people are like sold on the idea of like getting a sweat or feeling intense, but we've talked about how that's not necessarily necessary or smart all the time to work out. And again, like a lot of these people that come in are people that probably came from like a previously sedentary lifestyle to some extent. Like people are just sitting a lot, and all of a sudden you're doing like snatches and handstand push-ups and ring dips. Like it's I just question the longevity of it a little bit with the formula. And I know there's probably a lot of good CrossFit coaches out there, but if an individual has spent too much time just like working out in a flawed way, you won't be able to correct them during a session, especially when there's 15 to 20 participants, loud music, and everybody's brushing. Where's the time to actually teach somebody, right?
Exactly, exactly. And another thing, and I kind of allude to this too, is that not all CrossFit coaches are the same. Now, there are some unbelievably good CrossFit coaches. There are some that are amazing athletes that do really great programs. I mean, again, we had Tom on before who did do CrossFit training before at his gym, and I have no question that that man could teach you how to do everything
Yeah,
perfectly. Like he is an expert. But then again, not everyone has the same background he has. Some people do a weekend session, learning it just like personal trainers, and then comes in and then expects to be an expert that can teach you how to do this CrossFit. Yeah, there's too much variety, I feel like, with the coaching.
exactly, exactly. I mean, we know there are experts out there that teach Olympic weightlifting, gymnastics, calisthenics, powerlifting, and like plyometrics and like running and all that in its separate disciplines. And what CrossFit kind of is doing is, oh, if you go and take the CrossFit level 1 weekend course, you're now supposed to be the expert on a lot of these things. And it's, man, and not only teach a one-on-one, you're going to jump right into managing like 15 to 20 people who are all new to do it at the same time. It's just tough for them, but I just think it's a flawed system.
Yeah, completely, completely. And again, I do think though, I would say flawed system might be a little harsh. I feel like though there are people who do really enjoy that. Like maybe CrossFit can work for some people.
Yeah, well, I mean, going back to the pros, right? Like, I've always said that I would like to try CrossFit one day when my body is ready. Because the thing is, I really think you got to be in pretty damn good shape to do it. Um, like other than like in a group class, because you never know what you're gonna get, right? Like, I could probably make it through like a weightlifting one, but if there's like box jumps, running, and like toe to bars involved, I'm gonna literally die. So, and like either I'm gonna literally die or I'm gonna do it terribly and maybe hurt myself, right? So it's, but I think for people with a good level of fitness, like Amber, you're probably pretty close to there. Like you've got good endurance, you do the most of the lifts pretty well. Like someone like you could probably enjoy it, and it could be a good form of conditioning for you. But for a lot of people, I just think a lot of people are not in the right shape to do it, or they haven't learned the right technique to kind of graduate to being able to do CrossFit. I think CrossFit should be like at the top. That's a hard, like difficult, tricky workout. And if it was there, I think it's a good thing. I just don't think it should be the bottom. I don't like it being everyone's first exposure to this type of training.
I like how you positioned that it should be something where when someone has kind of had a baseline for these disciplines, then they go into it. And I appreciate the compliment, but I think the one thing I'm lacking that you definitely beat me on, no question, is the Olympic weightlifting. Like I can't even imagine doing a snatch. One of these days we're gonna have to do a video together of you teaching me more depth. But yeah, I agree. CrossFit is tough. And before we kind of talk more about like the actual competition, some of the athletes, I think another one of the cons is people going to CrossFit not really understanding what they're going to gain from it. Where I imagine a lot of people going to CrossFit, they watch the games, they see people like Rich Froning, who has an amazing physique, super strong, just like a really phenomenal athlete, and they think that CrossFit is what's going to get me to look like Rich Froning. I'm going to be like Rich Froning if I do CrossFit.
Exactly.
And to be honest, you're not. Like CrossFit, it really is more of an endurance thing than anything else. Like you're not going to gain much muscle from doing CrossFit for a multitude of reasons. Um, the CrossFit workouts are more built to focus on your endurance rather than actually breaking down and stimulating muscle growth. So you're not going to get to like 190, 200 pounds lean from doing CrossFit. Another thing too about CrossFit is that what you kind of was saying before about going into it once you have a bit of a pretty good baseline is true for almost every single one of the top CrossFit athletes. I believe Rich Froning already had a pretty good weightlifting background before he started training CrossFit. Like he already was very confident in his snatch and
Yeah.
clean and jerks, and was like a pretty athletic guy normally. Like he liked to move around, and so when he got into CrossFit, it wasn't a big challenge for him to do these workouts because he already had the baseline made. And you find a lot of these really great CrossFit athletes, they train on a standardized training program of just normal strength training programs that we've talked about. And then they use CrossFit as the sport they compete in, where then they train normal strength and conditioning and then do the CrossFit as the competition they're peaking for, similar to how maybe I do strength and conditioning with a normal strength program, and then I do compete in maybe jiu-jitsu or go running or something like that, where I'm using the strength and conditioning to build myself up for these spurts. I don't think people really realize that, where
Yeah.
CrossFit is the spurt and not actually the training you do for the spurt.
Yeah, and that's that's the disconnect. I think that's the biggest problem, right? And I think your point was the best point you had was all the best CrossFitters did not get where they are by doing CrossFit, right? Matt Fraser was a extremely good weightlifter. Well, not extremely, pretty good. Like he was national level. He did pretty good at nationals, right? Um, Tia Claire Toomey was a high level gymnast for quite a long time. And so what that gives you is it gives you that expertise in some of the lifts. Like not all the CrossFit Games athletes Olympic lift well. Like some of them are just like their form is pretty shit. But I guarantee you all of them are specialists in at least like a couple of the disciplines, right? Like some of them might have done ultra endurance really well, or they might have done like gymnastics or calisthenics really well. So, like that's how they got there. They didn't get there by doing WODs every day. They use WODs to peak, right? Kind of like how strongmen, when they train for competition, they don't actually just do like stone circuits every day. They start with like squat, bench, deadlift, like stuff that's safe, and then maybe closer to competition, they start to work in more and more specificity, right? Like there's a periodization, there's a cycle of like goals that they're working through, whereas the commercially sold CrossFit is just like, hey, let's just do WODs. We'll just keep doing WODs. It doesn't like, and random WODs too. It's not even like we're going to do the same WOD on Monday. It's constantly varied. And so there's that disconnect between the marketing message and the reality of what the sport really is.
And also, similar to Strongman, and again, this is Natty News, so I have to bring it up. CrossFit notoriously has a very lax drug testing program. I could be wrong about this, but I think not until 2019 did they really test for drugs for their athletes. And again, nothing against anyone who wants to take a little juice, but I think it's good for people to understand that when they watch the CrossFit Games, you're not always looking at natty certified athletes.
Oh, 100%. I mean, you just look at the stuff they can do. The balance of like endurance to strength to power movements and the way they can do it, it's pretty inhuman. It's I wouldn't doubt if a lot of them are on some good stuff.
Especially the recovery times too.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yep.
you're talking about, like I think the CrossFit Games is it a week long?
Yeah.
And so then like
Wait, no, it's like 4 or 5 days. 4 or 5 days.
my mistake, but they're doing something almost every day. I think
Yeah.
sometimes you might get a day break, some athletes, but then a lot of times it's just back to back, like doing
Yeah.
some pretty intense workouts. Like those WODs are tough.
Oh yeah. That's and every year they think of more like stupid stuff. Like it just gets harder every year.
Yeah, yeah. So I definitely do think like the CrossFit athletes are totally real athletes and they
Yeah.
do some amazing feats. But I think the big thing I have against CrossFit is that it pushes the marketing for people who might not be as familiar with it, where like if you want to become like these people, you do CrossFit.
Exactly. Like it kind of makes sense from the outside view. It's like, okay, yeah, if you do all the different forms of fitness at the same time, you'll become the most fit person. But I think what I've learned from many years of being a trainer, no, the smart way of doing it is to maybe spend most of your focus on like learning, being good at a couple of things. If you want to become strong, focus on becoming strong. If you want to focus on endurance, focus on that rather than just trying to do everything at once at the highest intensity. Like it's kind of like jumping into a battle without a plan, right? You're just not thinking about it, and then you're just doing stuff to get tired. And I think the idea of just working out to get tired is not. I'm not about that mentality.
I can definitely get the idea of working out just to get tired, and I think there could be benefits of that, but I definitely see what you mean. And also another aspect of CrossFit is it's expensive. Now, there's obviously a variety of fees, but I've seen like $200 a month for CrossFit gyms, and it makes me ask. And I think whenever you pay for a premium service, you need to ask yourself, what are you getting? And so if you're just getting someone to babysit you, giving you a WOD that you're going to do in a group, I don't think that's worth $200. But if you have a really great coach who really breaks down these movements, shows you how to do it, has a strong background in either gymnastics or Olympic weightlifting or even powerlifting that could help you train and learn these, I could see that being worth it. And learning all these movements from some certified real coach, yeah, that could be definitely a good use of your money. But that's another thing too, is it's hard to know, especially as a beginner, is your coach really legit?
Yeah, and I still think like if you want to learn to weightlift, like you should not go to a CrossFitting gym. You go to a weightlifting coach. If you want to learn to do handstands, cartwheels, and whatnot, you go and see a gymnastics coach, right? Because that's the right environment. And the environment of CrossFit, just to me, is not really a learning environment. It's you don't go in there to like learn. I'm not here to learn to get better at my lift today. I'm here to do the workout as fast as possible and get as many reps. And to that can be okay if that's your goal, but like if you want to go better, if you want to get better at these things, then you have to outsource. You got to go somewhere else. Just like the goal is different, right? That's not what CrossFit is.
Yeah, and I think that's again to kind of build it is that I think people don't know what CrossFit really is, because I feel if you ask a lot of people why do CrossFit, you will get a variety of answers. Like someone might be like, "Oh, I want to look good." Then I mean, why don't you just do a regular like bodybuilding program? Oh,
Exactly.
I wanna have better endurance for this reason. It's like, okay, well, like there's a lot of ways you can do endurance, too, and then it's like, oh, I want to look like Rich Froning. It's like, okay, that's not how you're gonna get there. But then the real answer is like, oh, why do you want to do CrossFit? It's like I want to do CrossFit. Like that's the true answer, and that's completely fine. But I think it's not always the intention people go into it with.
Exactly. Yeah, that's perfect. Like it's as long as you understand fully what it is. If you understand what CrossFit is, you understand what the point of WODs are, what kind of adaptations you get from them. If you like it, then go and do it. Hopefully you should be in shape to do it. But yeah, like go for it.
Yeah, and I do like the whole social element of it too. I think
Mhm.
it's nice that you can build a community from that. I think it's always nice whenever a sport or something can have a community.
Yeah, I mean, and I like the idea of the challenge if you're in the right shape, right? Like, maybe we should do a WOD one day next time we meet up. I think that'd be fun. Like, yeah, it's a fun challenge, just like in the right dosage. I think if you're doing it a little bit too much, it's gonna get tiring pretty quick too.
Yeah, we might have to. I'll give it a shot and see how we do.
Yeah, I think I can do a grace. Oh, a 30 clean and jerks. Oh my god.
Oh,
I don't
what
know.
weight is the clean and jerk at?
135 for 30 reps.
Yeah, that'd be rough.
That like, here's the thing, I'm like a decent weightlifter. There's no way my form would look anywhere good. After 15, it's gonna be I'm just gonna be chucking it.
Yeah, yeah. Oh man. But yeah, I think that's a pretty fair assessment of CrossFit. Any other things you want to mention about it?
Um, no, I think we covered a good bit. I think we were pretty fair on that end. It's not CrossFit's not inherently bad. I think people should be I think people should physically prepare by doing the separate disciplines before going to CrossFit. For the most part, like that's really what I believe. Yeah, because otherwise you have people that do CrossFit for years and then they go to a weightlifting coach like me afterwards, and I'm like, what is this form? Like you've been training for 5 years and like it looks so bad, like, has anyone ever like pointed it out? And they're like, no. So I do think that's a problem. And also, movement is like an art and something you should take seriously too. Like, I think it's important to like learn to move your body like well, execute things well too. I think there's a value to that rather than just like, just grinding it and just, trying to move it as fast as possible and do as much as possible all the time.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like CrossFit gets memed on a little too much. Like, I think there is a value in doing
Yeah.
like kipping pull-ups and all that stuff. Like, as much as it's memed on, there is a value of it, and it's a different value than a strict pull-up. Like, is doing 100 kipping pull-ups, will that really give you a huge back development? Maybe not as much, but is it still going to give you other benefits of what you're saying, of a better like movement, understanding how your body moves, and grip strength and other stuff too? Yeah, like you're gonna still gain stuff from it. So people do meme on CrossFit a bit too much, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you can do a kipping pull up correctly and that's what you enjoy and you kind of have an idea like what you're doing with it, then by all means, like it's fine. But now if you're doing it terribly, then I think that's where the problem is, right? Like I always say, like a program itself doesn't mean much. It's kind of how you execute it too. So if you execute it nicely, then yeah.
To be honest, all the kipping movements just seem like they feel sometimes harder than just doing a regular one.
I'm sure it works. It's like, I mean, it's the same idea as like like almost like how like weightlifting, you're doing all the coordination and form is just to get the weight from here to here in like the most efficient way possible. So I'm sure kipping pull-ups work for that purpose. I don't know how to do one. And that's probably why we think it's hard, because we don't know how to do one.
Have you seen a kipping dip?
You just use your legs and kick.
Yeah, like it looks a little weird, and like I kind of look at it, I'm like, I feel like just doing a regular dip would be easier.
Yeah, probably. Well, I mean, I think if you're in the flow of it, you probably know how to finesse it. Real
Fair.
CrossFitters know how to finesse like the lifts, like make everything as short and efficient as possible.
Yeah, no, that's very true. I mean, when you're competing a CrossFit thing, if you spend like a hundredth of a second longer than your opponent, you're gonna lose.
Yeah, even with the barbell, like the barbell cycling, they know how to like go from here back to the legs, tap the floor, and come back up, like in a very like you can tell they're like practiced in the skill, right? Whereas even a weightlifter doesn't know how to do that very well at all. They're very skilled.
Definitely, definitely. Well, I hope this episode really opened some eyes for some people who, hey, maybe have done CrossFit in the past, maybe are big CrossFitters, are curious about it. And yeah, we'd love to hear your own experiences about CrossFit and maybe some gains or some negative things we haven't mentioned about it. Again, I think it definitely is a legitimate form of exercise, a great way to make community, and you can definitely make some good gains on it. But it's not the pinnacle of fitness, and it's not what you need to do. And there's a lot of alternatives based off what your goals are. And yeah, Pat, any last closing statements?
No, other than the fact that we've got it. We will try CrossFit or some kind of like WOD at some point before the summer ends. So stay tuned. Maybe we'll like post a reel or something, or I'll post a testimonial while I'm laying on the floor dying.
Yeah, okay, I'm gonna have to start practicing to get ready for that.
We'll just use the RNG generator and just pick a random WOD. You can't prepare for it.
Oh no.
Hey, that's what a real CrossFit class would be.
It's gonna be like one of those ones where it's like 50 snatches, like 52 plate snatches for time, and I'll just be like, well, I can't do this.
Yep. Or like handstand walk, box jumps, double unders,
Oh my
Bulgarian
goodness.
split squats.
All right. Well, hey, it's something to look forward to, all the Natty News listeners. And with that, that has been your Natty News episode for the week. Natty News out.
Natty News out.